there are two things due to expire on July 1st of this year. One is the 25 and out provision to allow teachers to leave after 25 years of service with a reduced benefit. And number two is provision that those people with over 31 years of service retire with a 2.55 formula per year of service rather than the 2.5 formula. Now, in most years, I would say that this would be a slam dunk. Both of these provisions were passed once by the General Assembly and passed twice more as extensions. There were 5-year extensions put on each one of those with windows. Also, both of those two provisions are a slight cost savings to the system. Now, if you think about that just a minute, let me tell you why. And I'm going to work on you just a little bit because I have to take this to the General Assembly and explain it to them, so I'm going to test it on you to see if it works. This may be a smarter group, but we're still going to try. Excuse me, I didn't say that. I'm sorry, Representative. If you look at where we find ourselves, the biggest cost of our system is really inherent in the nature of our system. There are 3 important dates in the retirement business you need to keep in mind: hire, retire, and expire. Okay? So what's been happening over the years? We've seen the retirement age come down, and we've seen the expiration age move up. It moved up to the point where, for an average retiree, this is an important factoid for you, for an average retiree, female retiree, we will pay her more money in retirement than you paid her in salary while she was working. So that puts the funding of this back into perspective. Let me give you some other facts. Last year, our average retiree was 58.9 years of age. Being a female, again, with the normal expiration date that we would expect, and a 2% COLA, you'll watch that benefit continue to rise. So, what happens? And I'm going to give you 2 choices right here, and I think it explains it best of all. You can retire with 30 years of service at age 55, and you get $40,000 a year in round numbers. Or if you wait 1 more year, you'll have 31 years of service, 2.55 formula, and you can have $44,000 a year for the rest of your life. Which is the better deal? Number 1, believe it or not. And that's the reason there's a cost savings. Think about it. You gave up 1 year of benefits worth $40,000 to get $4,000 more each year. It's going to take you 10 years to recover that. Number 2, your cost of living doesn't start until the 2nd January after you retire, so you push that off even further. And in number 3, we also got contributions from you and your school district for that year that you did not retire. When you couple those things together, it actually is a savings by encouraging someone to stay. Just the opposite happens on the 25 and out. The 25 and out has a reduced formula. So rather than 2.5% per year of service, a teacher gets 2.2% at 25 years. So they take a pretty good reduction to leave at that stage. That reduction more than compensates for the fact that we're going to pay them over a longer period of time. Now, why I'm telling you those things is, under normal circumstances, if you take bills that were passed 3 times and has a savings, you would expect that to come through the General Assembly almost on a consent bill. These are not normal times. And I was joking with Mike, and I said I may or may not say this, but in many cases, I think there's almost an undeclared war with some members of the General Assembly on public education and public retirement. We're getting hit with collateral damage. But the point is, I think we will pass it. We're working with Mike, MSBA, the teachers associations, et cetera, are all interested in this. No one's really opposed to it, and again, it is a savings, so I would expect that both of these bills would go forward. There is one bill we are concerned about, and let me give you the companions on those bills. Representative Thompson has House Bill 313, and Senate Bill 232 is Senator Wallingford. And they are both extensions of those 2 provisions that have been in law for a number of years. There are some challenges. And one of those is a challenge of a bill that we have, Senate Bill 221. Senate Bill 221 would remove the flexibility that the board has in setting the contribution rates and freeze the contribution rate where it currently is. One of the strengths of this system has been that independence and an independent board setting the contribution rate as necessary to make sure that the system stays funded. I'm concerned that when I see a larger role for the state, freezing the flexibility of the Board of Trustees, that can continue. In and of itself, the bill is not that bad, but what it can do, it removes all the flexibility for the next 30 years on the board. And I think that's a dangerous precedent. So I would ask you to take a look at that bill. Our board has taken a position in opposition to it, so we'll testify against that bill. Lastly, let me throw out some ideas and hopefully stimulate some questions for you. One of the things, I guess, that questions that I get oftentimes is, what keeps you awake at night? What do you worry about? Well, with a system with 240,000 people, most of the educators in the state do not have Social Security. Their primary security rests in our office, and I worry about that. It's a big job. I worry about it in two areas, and I have two broad challenges that I think we have in the public retirement community. Number one is political, number two is economic. I'm going to touch on both of those very quickly. First of all, political. That undeclared war on public education is also an undeclared war on public retirement in a roundabout way, and defined benefit plans. I got in this business in 1978, to start my 36th year next month in this business. When I got into the business, about 65% of the private sector workforce in America had a defined benefit pension plan like this one. Today, it's about 13%. And that corresponds with what you've heard many times about the 77 million baby boomers coming through, the pig and the python example. Well, the pig is about ready to exit the python, okay? But what's happened with that group is they're woefully unprepared for retirement because they've lost their pension coverage. And many of them who had 401k or 457 kinds of plans, even if they did everything right, they invested it well, they took the match from their companies, invested them well, they got hit with two of the three largest investment declines in American history, when the tech bubble burst in 2000 and then the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. What do we have with that 77 million baby boomers outside of education? We got a lot of people that can't retire. And we have a situation that looks very similar to what was happening in the 1930s and the creation of Social Security. You've got a lot of people that simply can't leave the job that they have. I've got a personal example. I have two boys living in my home, one upstairs and one downstairs, 25 and 26 years old, 3 college degrees between them, and they're both underemployed. Why? Not from lack of trying. What they're finding is this job market is so tight because people of our generation are not leaving it. So this retirement situation has a much longer tail to it than just what's happening at PSRS. I think we as a nation are in the midst of a huge retirement crisis that has an effect on our economy and how fast our economy is going to grow. So from a political standpoint, why I'm telling you that is I want to set the stage for some of the comments that you will get. Some of the comments are, no one should have a pension plan. We should put everybody in a defined contribution plan. Well, understand that what's going to happen, one of the reasons that you did this was to attract and retain quality teachers. If you could leave anytime you wanted to, the investment that you put into their education and training is going to go out the window. And one of the advantages of having a defined benefit plan like PSRS is that you do keep your teachers. After you've invested in them, at about 12 or 15 years of service, they start to feel golden handcuffs because they understand the value of their pension plan. If they did not have that, you'd see a greater amount of turnover. Number two, political. Social Security. Quick history. In the 1930s, when Social Security was created, public employees were prohibited from participation. As I said, this plan was created in 1946 primarily because our teachers could not get Social Security coverage. So they created a plan, a better plan, that stood the test of time. In the 1950s, the Social Security law was amended, and it allowed public employers to come into Social Security on an individual vote basis. Our teachers voted in the 1950s not to be covered by Social Security. It was a great decision for them because they have better benefits that are better funded than those people who are in Social Security. But the political aspect of it is starting to come up on us. There are only about 6% of the workforce in America not covered by Social Security, primarily teachers, policemen, and firemen. Okay, many of the same situations we have. The other 94% have absolutely no sympathy for them, even though they did it right. And what's happening today? Social Security is not in good financial condition, unlike our pension plan. Frankly, it won't work the way it's structured. They don't have the investment. They only have two things they can do. They got to raise contributions or cut benefits. That's the only two levers that they can move. One of the levers they want to move is mandatory coverage of newly hired state and local employees. Now, you think, well, new hires, what difference does that make? It makes a big difference. And it can make a very big difference in two areas. One's policy and one's financial. Policy. As I said earlier, our average teacher last year was 58.9 years of age. And the structure of your pension plan right now is to attract people in the early to mid-20s, keep them for 30 years, and then push them on out the door and move on. We have a younger workforce because of that. Our teaching workforce is younger than those states that are covered by Social Security. The average age is about 64 of retirement for those states. So I think that kids in our system, in our schools, benefit because of having a DB system that does that. If mandatory coverage comes in, that advantage will go away. You'll see a slightly older workforce as will slightly age because people are going to stay on. And as retirement age rises under Social Security, mine is 66, it's going to continue to go up to age 70. You're going to have an older teaching force in your schools in doing that. And we see it now for those states that are not covered by Social Security. That's the policy implication. I think it's a very real one. The second one is a financial implication. I'll tell you something that you all know and you didn't think about. This has been happening for decades in education. At hire, retire, expire continuum, we bring people in early to mid-20s. We'll have about a 50% turnover during the first 5 years. Been that way for decades. But if teachers stay 5, there's a very good chance they'll stay a career. Now, what happens during that 5 years? Let's say a teacher leaves with 3 years of service. The employer contributions stay in the pension fund. Most of the investment earnings stay in the pension fund. They would take a refund of their contributions plus some interest. But in essence, what's happening, the nature of education, that turnover in the first 5 years is helping subsidize those people who stay a career. If you take those people out, either by putting them in a defined contribution plan or putting them in Social Security, the system will no longer get those actuarial gains from the nature of the teaching profession. Costs will rise. We don't know by how much yet because it's, again, a speculation. But from Social Security's standpoint, new covered employees are a wonderful thing. It only makes up 5% of their shortage. But they realize they're not going to have to pay any benefits out to those 5 people for 30 or 35 years. So it's pure cash flow coming in. And it's not in the best interest of our schools. Once a year, I go out and talk to our congressional delegation. I talk to them about mandatory Social Security coverage, and I explain why mandatory Social Security coverage is bad for Missouri school kids, because it starts to impact the quality of the teachers that we have in our schools. I've been successful in years past. I don't know how successful I'm going to be now because of the politics. So while we have that on the federal issue, we also have those people who, again, just don't believe that anyone should have a pension plan under any circumstances. I don't care if it's well run. I don't care if it's well funded. I don't care if it accomplishes the policy goals that you've got in place. I just don't think you should have one. I'll use a word here, but I'm going to be very careful when I say it. But part of this is coming from the concept of pension envy for people who don't have a pension fund. So it's coming from the ground up saying, why should teachers have something that I don't have? Well, the answer to that is what I said earlier. Do you want quality people teaching your kids? Do you want them at the peak of their career? This pension fund does a great job in making sure that that happens. So the last thing I have that keeps me awake at night is economics. As I said, we are one of the largest institutional investors in the United States and in the world. The assets of this system, together, the two plans, are almost $33 billion. This is a difficult time to be an institutional investor, but it's hugely important to you and where the contributions are. Remember those 3 levers I said? If I break them down, the employee contributions make up about 21% of what a person will receive. The school district contributions make up about 19%, and the remaining 60% comes from the investment earnings. And we've structured a plan actuarially that we need to earn 8% net of our fees for perpetuity. We've been able to do it looking backwards. For the last 20 years, we've earned 9.3% per year. The system's gotten healthier. But going forward is a challenge that we have. And we have a challenge because of the low interest rate, low return environment and the slow economic activity that's happening not just in the United States but in the world. and it has a direct effect on you, because if this continues, the only other lever that we have is either cutting benefits or raising contributions. Now, I'm comfortable that 8% over a long period of time is obtainable. We've been able to do it. We've projected in a number of different ways, and we think we'll be able to. But we're going to enter periods where we will not. We think because of the funding stabilization policy and the fact that we roll those gains and losses in, it won't have a material effect on the contribution rate. But again, that's the thing that troubles me. As I look at where the economy is today, I just checked. If I want to buy a 10-year Treasury bond, the yield on that bond is about 1.7%. It's a long way from 8. So if I want to play defense, and I don't like the equity market, and I don't like what's going on with the euro, what I would normally do is buy U.S. Treasuries and wait until the situation cleared. It's very difficult to do that in this kind of an environment. And as I watch where we find ourselves today from an economic standpoint, where I would characterize it, in 08-09, I felt that we were standing on the edge of a cliff. And we walked up to the edge on more than one time and then stepped back. And I would say today we're a few steps back from the edge, but we're a long way from having a clear economic sailing going forward. So the asterisk that I would put on that contribution rate and the funded status of the plan is assuming that the investment markets don't back up and we don't have another catastrophic kind of event like we have the Great Recession. But last comment, coming back full circle, this system's in good condition. It's in good condition because we've had a dedicated group of people for the last 68 years making sure that it stays that way, that that wall between the politicians and that pension fund stays there, that the money that needs to be put in the plan is put there and it's invested prudently and efficiently, and all of those things I will tell you will continue under our watch. There are things beyond our control that do bother me. But beyond that, we're in good shape. When you read about plans that are in trouble, you're not reading about the Missouri plan. What they should be doing is coming here and looking at us on how to do it.